Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, depending on the time zone where you're following us. I am Veronica De Sanctis, and I'm Project and Training Manager at the Scalabrini International Migration Institute, SIMI, here in Rome. For those of you that are not familiar with our institute, SIMI is an international institute for study, research, and training whose main mission is the theological and pastoral formation of priests, religious men and women, and lay people engaged in the field of human mobility as scholars, researchers, and pastoral workers. SIMI offers a wide range of learning and training programs in collaboration with national, international, ecclesial, and academic institutions. We have a multidisciplinary and an interdisciplinary approach, and our courses and program address the phenomenon of human mobility, exploring both its theoretical and practical and operational complexities, ensuring that all participants are able to develop action plans to create a community capable of welcoming, protecting, promoting, and integrating migrants and refugees in full harmony with local contexts of reception. Today's meeting is the result of a collaboration between SIMI and the International Union of Superiors General, which are continuing the formation journey begun in 2021 with the international conference Migrants and Pilgrims Like Our Ancestors, and continued with a 3-year project of online and in-person webinars and seminars held from 2022 to 2021 in Spanish, English, and Portuguese, and with special support of the Dicastery for promoting integral human development. In light of this previous collaboration, SIMI and UISG are continuing their formation for religious women, working with migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, internally displaced persons, victims of trafficking, itinerant persons, and their families. But before beginning our meeting of today, I would like to share a greeting video from Sister Carmen Elisa Bandeo, head of the UISG International Migrants and Refugees Network. I ask our technicians to please run the video. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning, sisters. Or this depends on in which part of the world are you today. Just I wanted to welcome you to this new series of webinar where we are returning to the project that we have it with the Integral Human Development Institute. We want to give some formation, and okay, we start today. We will continue with this, so we just invite you, please follow us. Thank you for coming and feel at home. The UISG is yours. So, come.
And so, thank you to Sister Carmen Elisa Bandeo, which could not be with us today. So she sent her greetings through this video. And as she was mentioning, this is a new series of webinars where SIMI and UISG are collaborating together to bring advanced training to sisters all over the world. And this today webinar is the first of a series. And today we are going to deal with the fundamentals of project cycle management. And our speaker is Cecilia Bock, Monitor and Evaluation Director at Jesuit Refugee Service at Rome. Before working with JRS, Cecilia worked in Kenya and South Sudan with Caritas Spain, in Kenya with Caritas Italiana, and she has worked as a consultant for FOXIL, which is the Federation of Italian NGOs, and for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. She has been working with JRS since the end of 2003, and we are very pleased and happy to have her today as our main speaker, teaching us about the basic cycles of project management. Thank you, Cecilia. And before you start, I invite all our audience to please keep their microphone off during the presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you very much, Veronica. Thank you for this welcome. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I was asked to support SIMI and UISG in doing this webinar on project cycle management. For me, it's really a great opportunity, and we will try to do our best because it's a quite a big topic, and we will try to do our best in 2 hours, in a little bit less than 2 hours, because there is a break. I would like, I'll immediately start sharing with you briefly the agenda of this 2 hours session. And I will start. Of course, Veronica has introduced me. Currently, I work in JRS, Jesuit Refugee Service. I don't know if you are familiar with this organization. It's an organization that deals with forcibly displacements, and we are present in 58 countries. So my contribution today is really based on my experience lately in JRS, but also with some other organizations before. So you will see that the presentation is with the JRS logo because it's the organization where I currently work. So I start with my screen. Okay, so we start with project cycle management. So here is the agenda. We will finish at 4:30. Basically, there are two main presentations now from 2:40 to 3:10. I will talk in a presentation about these basic concepts of PCM. Then there will be a session for feedback and questions and answers. Then we will have a short group activity for you to be engaged and discuss among yourselves. Then we'll have a short break of 10 minutes between 3:40 and 3:50. Then we will continue with another presentation where we will focus on project cycle management, but on the specific part of MIL, monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, with some hints and some concepts. Then we will have another feedback session, question time, and then some key takeaways. So here, when I was thinking about the learning objectives of this sort of training, basically I was thinking about these three. The first one, I would like you to go back home and with improved knowledge and understanding of what is project cycle management and some of the related tools that we will not have the time to go in depth, but at least you will have a general understanding and knowledge of the tools. Then skills, you will be able to distinguish between log frame and theory of change. Probably you're already familiar with these concepts, but we will see what are the differences. And then what is project design and monitoring plan. And then the third one, I hope that you will feel that you will be more confident and I mean with yourself about this matter, these topics, and as team members, because projects, of course, are done in team. So these are the learning objectives. Then I have some ground rules. As I've shown you in the agenda, there will be some sessions in question and answers. But this is a big but. If there is something that is unclear, that you want to go back and see it more in detail, please stop me and we go back and understand better the concept. And if something is unclear, just stop me and we will go through it again. And then the third point, let's try to enjoy the webinar, even if it's somehow a boring topic, in the sense that you sisters, you are usually very familiar with the actions, the activities, being with people. So sometimes talking about these theories can be a little bit boring. But I think it's we will try to do our best to make it as less boring as possible. So basically there are these two modules. In this first part, as I was mentioning, the first part of the presentation, so the objectives, the learning objectives are to be able to refer to keywords used in project cycle management. You will be able to identify the different phases. We will see that there are very specific phases in the PCM. And hopefully you can discuss about some of the common characteristics of roles and responsibilities in PCM based on your work. There will be a small group work discussion. So we start with the first one, which is basic concept of project. And I have already the first question. What is a project? Can somebody, I mean, don't be shy. Can somebody give me some definitions of project? Do you know what is a project? Now, aspetta, let me go back because I want to see if there are hands raised. Somebody, I see people already smiling a little bit, like Jeannie. Already I've seen a smile, or Sister Paula. Do you know what is a project? No, I don't want to pinpoint of you, just in case. Do you know what, somebody knows what is a project? I'm sure that you are running wonderful projects, that you are implementing amazing projects.
These are planned activities
Mm-hmm.
for a given purpose, to achieve a given purpose,
Mm-hmm.
with the budget and time frame, something like that.
Okay, so already Jenny, Sister Jenny can come here and do the workshop on my behalf because I think she has very well spotted a possible definition. So here I've taken this definition from the European Union aid delivery methods on cycle on project cycle management, and the definition, in fact, is a project can be defined as a series of activities aimed at bringing about specific objectives within a defined time period. So Jenny said it's basically time bound. So we're talking about a time frame, and with a defined budget. So in a project, we have to think already about the budget and how we're going to implement those activities that we have planned. So it's a very good already replies, because this is a very typical definition of a project. So here, before we go ahead with the presentation, also there is a little quiz that I have organized of very simple 4 questions, just for you to have an idea of where you are in project cycle management, and the knowledge and the understanding that you have. So I would like to answer to these questions that I will try to upload in a platform. But just one second, because I don't see the messages. Sorry. Yes. Just one second now. Just one second, I'll stop share and I will put the other. Okay. So okay, just 1 second, because I would like aspetta. Can everybody see this URL?
Yes.
Okay, if you go on that URL, okay,
The quiz is not yet open.
aspetta, okay, start, okay. Okay,
Yes, it works.
it works. Okay, do you see the question?
Yeah, but it's number 4 already.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
in number
Number 4
4.
already.
So I'll start with number 1.
Yeah, thank you.
In fact, I refresh my quiz. Just 1 second. Okay, so I present. Now I start with number 1. Quiz question number 1. Okay.
Yes, now we can see question number 1.
Okay.
Do we have to wait for the next number?
Adesso number 2 I started now.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't see it.
Can you see it, number 2?
No.
Yes, I can see.
Oh,
No. That's
no.
1. It's a true false.
Is it running?
No, it's not.
No.
See that.
Let's
Okay,
see.
start again.
We start again? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, this is number 1. Can you see it?
No.
No, you have already
It says you have
question.
already answered this question. Let's wait and see how you did it. Okay.
And now it says that.
Okay, now number 2.
Okay.
Okay, now number 2.
Okay. Aspetta, number 2. 4 and 10. Okay. Now we start with number 3.
Yes.
Ok. 8, Great job. Okay, we go with the last one, number 4. Eleven and 2. Okay. Great. Okay, go back 1 second and we share. Okay. So just to recap and the questions that you have started. So the first one, a project is a combination of several programs, and actually majority said no, and in fact is correct, is not, because we have seen that is a combination of several activities, because actually the program is a combination of several projects, but actually the project is a combination of several activities. So the majority of the sisters already knew this answer. Then we go to the second one. We need to do project planning before needs assessment, and the answer is no, is actually false, because we will see in the cycle of the project that actually needs assessment come before the planning, because we have to assess the needs of the beneficiaries, of the people that we are serving, and then we do planning. Sometimes it seems that they are similar, but actually in the project cycle management, according to the manuals and to what is taught by the literature, the universities, etc., needs assessment comes before. Then this is a little bit, in fact, a little bit tricky, and the actual answer is no, is false, because here we're entering into the all those concepts that are outcomes, outputs, how we measure impact, etc., and this was a tricky one, because we said output indicators point to the change of behavior and attitude of the target population. The answer is no, is false, because the output are those dimensions that we will see later are more linked to numbers, processes that are actual deliverables, number of trainings, people trained, but not really changing in what we call the final population, which are the people that we are serving, that is linked more to the outcomes. So here the answer is false, because the output indicator do not point at behavioral change, but to access, for example, to services, to schools, to water points, etc. So this was a little bit tricky. And then the last one, project evaluation, is about answering what has a project done and how did we do it? And the answer is yes. The project evaluation is one important phase of the project cycle, where we ask ourselves, or we reply to a donor, what have we done? How did we do it? Did we do it well? Did not? Can we improve it? And so the answer was yes. So well done, very good. We can continue with our presentation. So we are here. I want to change this. We start with the phases, the various phases of the cycle. Of course, we already see that this is a cycle. We start from the top, which is programming, and we go clockwise, and we have these famous 5 phases. So we start with programming, and we will see in detail what it is. Then we start with the needs assessment, so identification of our project and of the needs. And then we do the planning, so we plan what we want to do, and we formulate the projects. Then we start the implementation, so we do implementation and monitoring. And then the last phase is evaluation. And then we go back and plan. So, of course, I mean, this was developed with the idea of trying to explain the different phases of the cycle. Then in reality, sometimes it's difficult to see it very cyclical, because sometimes we do at the same time programming and needs assessment. So in reality, sometimes it's difficult to follow it like with these different phases. But this is the way we like organize ourselves for describing a project and actually implementing the activities. So if we start looking in details the various phases, we start with the programming. And here the typical is the strategic framework. Of course, when I was telling you before, I used the example of JRS. I work for JRS that deals with the forcibly displaced people. And now we have developed last year a new strategic framework that basically gives us a direction, a sort of a roadmap of how the organization wants to respond to the crisis, to the needs of the people, like having an idea of the strategy that we will try to implement for the next 5 years. So this is where we start. Any organization, I know that you work in different organizations and congregations. I am almost sure, pretty sure that each of your organization has the strategy, that is the strategic framework. So when we talk about programming, is that the organization has to have an idea, a roadmap of the strategy that the organization wants to implement for usually 3 to 5 years. So that is what we call programming in the phase. So here, I put here some of the questions that we ask ourselves. So can the organization here, for example, here I would put, can JRS do it? Can the organization that from now I call it org do it? Does the project fit within the organization strategy? For example, I can tell you very clearly, JRS, we deal with beneficiaries, with people served, by supporting them in education, in psychosocial support, and then we give livelihoods opportunity, and then reconciliation. These are our main, reconciliation, and then psychosocial support. So these are our strategies, and these are the programs that we have from the next 5 years. Then we continue with the identification. So in the identification, once we have that strategy and that roadmap, within that strategy, we start assessing the needs of the people. How we do it? I mean, of course, there are many ways. In our organization, for example, we deal with new emergencies, but also we deal with the protracted situation. Unfortunately, in the world, there are a lot of protracted situations. So in the new emergency, we do full needs assessments where we assess the needs of also newcomers, new populations. In protracted situation, we call it home visits. We go in the various homes, and we try to reassess the needs of the beneficiaries that are like supported by JRS throughout the year. So basically, in the needs assessment, what is important to highlight is that usually the needs assessment doesn't only deal with the problems of the population, of the beneficiaries, but also we try to assess also the resources. There are some cases where some families have more resources than others, some families are more or less vulnerable than others, and so we assess what is the situation in terms of needs. That needs is a wider concept, is not only the needs and the problems, but also the capacities and the resources that they have. Once we have this understanding of the needs, we continue with the next phases. And here, basically, we answer the questions: what are the needs of the people we serve? What resources are needed to respond? And who are the stakeholders? Okay, so here remember that sometimes we have new situations and sometimes we have ongoing. And the output, what we will have at the end of this phase, we have a needs assessment report. So the organization has a report that tells you what is the profile of the beneficiaries, what are their needs and their resources. Then this is very quick. I imagine that in each of your organization, you have some priorities. Like, for example, GRS, this is a criteria that was developed by the first international director, Mark Raper. We usually work where the greater need is, where the more severe misery and suffering are, where the poorest among the poor, with the most vulnerable, with the most forgotten, invisible, abandoned people by the other organizations are, where the more universal good and greatest fruits are followed in our service. So this is very important, again, because each organization has its own ways of working and supporting and accompanying the beneficiaries. Then the next phase, and very important, and this is, okay, we will see the dimension one by one, is the planning. So in the quiz, it was, is planning happening before the needs assessment? No, actually, before the planning, we have to do the needs assessment. So once we have assessed the needs, we start doing the planning. The planning means that we start designing our projects, and we usually design it with these techniques, either with the log frame or the theory of change. We will see it in detail, well, more or less what are the differences between the log frame and the theory of change. But that means that here we start designing our project, and what it means that we start distinguishing and like delineating and designing the various dimensions. So the dimensions are the goals. I'm sure that you have heard the overall goal, the outcomes, the outputs, and the activities. So we have to say, we have to decide what is the goal that the project wants to achieve, what are the outcomes, so the changes in the population, what are the outputs, and what are the activities. So we basically spell them out and define them. And for each of the dimensions, we delineate and design the indicators. And then we will see it later more in the monitoring part. We start identifying the means of verification. So through which means and through which data we can measure these indicators. So in this planning phase, we ask ourselves the question: what is the organization going to do? So what are the goals, objectives, indicators, activities? Here before there was a sister, I think Jenny, that was saying how much does the project cost. So here in this phase of the planning, we have to start thinking about the budget. So how much all these objectives, activities will cost, and how much will it cost to implement them, and how do we fund the project? In fact, we have to start thinking also to start doing fundraising, how we are going to support that project, who is going to plan to support it. And this is very important because here is the link between planning and fundraising. In order to do fundraising, you have to have good projects and good plans and good implementation plans, because that's the best way then to sell, pass me the word, because it's sell in the sense that to make a case for your project. And so the output of this planning phase is that we have a project proposal that we call it annual plan, and where we have planned activities versus budget. And there is usually this tendency and a mistake that sometimes happens, that some organizations have this temptation of doing first the budget and then the plans with the outcomes, outputs, activities, whereas the correct way of doing the planning is thinking about the plans first, what you want to do and how you're going to do it, and then assigning to each objective, outputs, activity, a cost. So in that way, you will have a good plan that is composed by the narrative part and the financial part that is the budget. Now, I don't see the hands from here. Maybe Veronica, you can stop me if there are questions because I continue with my
Yes, I
presentation.
will. I will just in case.
Thank you very much. So then the other phase is that we have the implementing monitoring phase. Okay, so maybe something that I didn't say of the previous one, we said planning and formulation. So formulation is after you have planned, you actually put it in paper and write the project. Then you have the implementing and monitoring phase. You see that here like the circles are the same because here we ask ourselves the question, what is the organization doing? What activity is the organization conducting? Is the organization responding to people's needs? So here, compared to the previous one, before it's like the plan, what we are planning to do. So what will the organization do? Here in this slide, in this phase, that is the implementation and monitoring, once it's planned and hopefully once the project is financed, is funded, we actually do the activities. So we actually carry out the activities, the objectives based on what we have written in the plan. So clearly the goals, the outcomes, the outputs will have to be the same. And here in this phase, in the monitoring phase, we have to check if what was planned adheres to what it is implemented. Okay, so the output of the implementation will be implementation and project report. So we will actually start doing the activities and we will start collecting information for reports, but we will still have the same indicators. So we will use the indicators to measure the achievements against what we defined in the planning phase, that are the goals, outcomes, output, activities, and then we have the means of verification. Then now I wanted to do a little bit of zoom in these dimensions because I think, I'm checking my time, because I think these are a little bit the difficult part of when we talk about project cycle management, all the various definition of goal, outcomes, outputs, activities. And so we start with some definitions. What is a goal? So the goal usually, when you think about the goal or impact, think about the big picture. So the big picture is changes that you are working towards, but that your activities alone may not achieve. So, for example, usually the big picture is improve quality of life, for example, of refugees in camp X or camp Y. Of course, by just carrying out just some activities, you will not achieve that overall goal or impact. So the goal is really the big change in the final population that will that we can achieve by doing all the various processes of the project. Impacts are the primary long-term effects of an intervention, and they can be positive, negative, direct or indirect, intended or unintended. So usually when we talk about impacts is that when we want to measure the changes, when the goal usually is measured by some measurements that we usually do in evaluation of the impact. Okay, so the impact usually, I mean, refers to the big change to the big picture. When we do impact, through impact, we don't measure some activities, but the big one, the goal. Then outcomes. Outcomes can be immediate, intermediate, or ultimate. Clearly, the ultimate outcome is similar to the overall goal. But for example, here I think the best way to understand outcome as opposed to outputs, for example, is that outcome is something that again is a change to the final population. Like for example, we want to create awareness in a population among beneficiaries, so that people are aware they have made this change in attitude, or for example, change in behavior or practices. Like for example, change in behavior, some type psychological behavior has changed, or for example, in terms of livelihoods, they have the capacity to make savings. Our beneficiaries found a job, some deep change in their lives. And the ultimate, takes the form of a sustainable change of a state among people served. So a reason for being, again, this is linked to some fundamental change. Then outputs are direct products of services, like for example, teachers that are trained, or people that participants in a meeting, or people receiving visits, etc. So usually outputs are really linked to numbers of people accessing or having finished some trainings. And activities are the actual activities that I have to provide or carry forward to achieve the outputs and then the outcomes, etc., etc. Then after we will talk about these chains of results. So for activities is the actual activities that I do to do the trainings or to do the meetings or the visits, etc., etc. Are like as we said, like a little bit lower in the chain of the results. And then we have the last phase of the project cycle management, that is evaluation. Evaluation usually is a process that we do at the end of the project, of the cycle. And here the question that we ask ourselves is, what has the organization done? So did the organization respond to the people needs? What were the lessons learned for the organization? So the outputs are findings and recommendations and lessons learned. In JRS, for example, it's very important when we have evaluations to have also, usually we do it with external consultants. It's very important also to have internal team members of the organization to make the process more fluid, with the idea of really having a lesson learned that from this exercise to improve our projects. In some cases, the evaluations can be commissioned by donors. So some donors that have funded our project, they might want to know more and the commissioned evaluation. In some other cases, we commission ourselves an evaluation to understand if we are doing well, if we can learn from our project, if we can scale it up and reproduce it, or if there is something that we didn't do well. I think that now I have, looking at my time, I have this slide also later, but this is very briefly what are the differences between monitoring and evaluation. The monitoring is continuous, is tracking progress against indicators, is measure the use of input activities and outputs to make minor changes, whereas evaluations are bigger exercises. They are done usually occasionally at the end of the phase of a project, usually once every 3 years. They are in-depth analysis, long-term impact, where do you remember that we were talking about goal, outcomes, outputs? Usually through evaluation, we try to assess the impact of the projects and to make major changes. Where I said, okay, JRS, we consider it external, outside the organization of project, but it's important also for when we talk about evaluation, it's always conducted by an external consultant, but it's always good for us to have some internal members of the organization to guide the process. So just to recap, programming, can we do it? Needs assessment, what are the needs? Then we have planning, what will the organization and how will the organization do it? And basically in the planning and the formulation phase, we will have the design of the project and the project planning, but also reports. And then we will have the indicators we will be set up here. Then in the implementation, we have what is the organization doing and how is doing it. And in the evaluation, what has the organization done and how has the organization done it. And then we go back to the programming phase. So these are the phases of the project cycle management, and we have seen them all with a certain level of details. So now, according to our plan and our agenda, we have a feedback session, some clarification, positive feedback, suggestion, specific and constructive, and then we can go to some group activity. So that I will tell you later. So I go back to the group. Okay. So this presentation will be available. I will pass it on to you for the record. And before we go into group activities, if there is any clarification, feedback, or suggestion that you want to give, we have some time to go and discuss together about something. Just 1 second that I see it. Okay, so will the recording be made available? Yes. Okay, Veronica has just already replied. I'm looking at the time. Okay, if there is no question for the moment, I would like in small groups for 20 minutes to reflect. I mean, as we said, I mean, it's really packed. So usually we take some time to go together in groups and discuss and reflect. I think here the way I had organized it is in a way that you go in group and make some reflection among yourself. Of course, I mean, here I tried to divide between project coordinators, field-based positions, or others. Now, I don't know in this group if there are project coordinators, field-based positions, because you all come from different realities and organization. I bet that some of you will be on the field directly working with the beneficiaries. Other will be in more back office. Some will be more in front offices, some more in back offices. But here, I would like to think about these 3 questions. So the first one, which PCM phase am I currently involved in? If you think that you are already doing something of the 5 phases, if this presentation resonates, that you feel that you are actually engaged in one of the phases, and how. Which PCM phase should I be more involved in? Like you have seen the various phases. You think that maybe you should be more involved, maybe in needs assessment or in planning and formulation, if according to your reflection. And this other question: how can I work together with my colleague in the project? If you think that based on this presentation, you think that there are ways in which you can be more involved, and you can be more involved and work together better with your colleagues in the project. So here, usually when I do this presentation, we assign a note taker and one facilitator and one presenter. But now, given that there will be no time really for presenting. Maybe I think it's an opportunity for you to discuss among the groups, and then maybe even if you don't present, I think it's fine, because I think it's important that you discuss and think about these three different questions. Now, Gianluca told us that you are all back. I hope you enjoyed the reflection together in the groups. So I see from the agenda that now we have a 5 minutes break because we took 5 minutes from the previous session. So I think it's good to have a little pause. You go to have a coffee or anything that you want, and you come back in 5 minutes, okay? So at here in Rome, I'm based in Rome, is 3:45. You come back at 3:50. Okay?
Thank you.
See you in a bit. Now we go. So I hope you had the chance to have a little bit of a rest for 5 minutes, and and also that you had good discussions and reflections among yourselves in the group discussions moment. So now we go back to the second part of the presentation. I will start. I will share with you another presentation that I have, and towards the end of our webinar, there will be moments where we can retake the discussions that you had in groups and make some reflections all together. So we prefer to talk about later, after we have given this second part of the webinar that I'm going now to share with you. So I'm sorry. Okay. So we go into the second part, which is still basic PCM, project cycle management, but I really wanted to give a little bit of focus, to go a little bit more in depth into the MIL part. MIL stands for Monitoring, Evaluation, Accountability, and Learning. So, well, a part that it is very fashionable lately. Everybody talks about MIL, but beyond the fact that that is fashionable, in the sense that donors or organizations are really obsessed with this MIL, I think it's really important because it's really an opportunity for the organization to go in depth and see if we are doing a good job or not, and if we are really accountable to the affected population. So accountable, meaning that if we do our work well for the people that we serve. Usually when we talk about accountability, is accountability towards donors, which is very important because we have to show our donors that we are working well. But the first and foremost part that is important is to be accountable to the affected population, to the people that we serve, because we do our projects to improve the quality of lives and to improve some standards for the people that are affected. So this is what it stands for. I mean, we have seen monitoring and evaluation in our cycle, but now more and more, even if it's not included in the cycle, we talk about accountability and learning. So learning, we have already seen that we talk about learning, for example, when we do evaluations, but also when we do monitoring, we learn a lot and we want to understand if we're doing well or not. So I really wanted to have this focus on this part of the PCM, which is one of the phases of the cycle management. I didn't focus on needs assessment or, for example, on really formulation of projects, but I really wanted to focus on this. And I will tell you now why. So the learning objective of the second part are increase the understanding of key result change in the logical framework as basis for project monitoring. recap definition of monitoring as a concept and its process, including data collection and data analysis. Because of course, if we do this correctly, then we will have a lot of understanding if we are accountable to the, as we say, to the people served, but also if we can learn a lot about our projects, about our mistakes or the good things that we are doing. So, so first, I wanted to share with you these two like approaches that seem a little bit scaring, but actually they are not if you look them. Oh, sorry. If you look them, okay, I put admit in detail. So I'm sure that you are familiar with the concept of the theory of change and the logical framework. So basically, these are two different ways of designing a project. So we are in the phase of we have done our programming, we have done our needs assessment. We want to start planning our projects, and so more and more today we hear that we do our plans through the theory of change. That is usually it can be used for planning, but also for evaluations. But now we're focusing on planning, as opposed to the logical framework. The logical framework was created in the 70s, and as you can see, is quite rigid. Basically, there is a pathway that is kind of not very flexible. You have the activities, you have the outputs, you have the outcomes, and you have the goal, and you start designing all these dimensions, and you create a log frame that usually is very well known to be designed in a matrix. You have the matrix with all these dimensions, as opposed to the theory of change that here I've written is it shows the big picture of a project or some changes that we want to achieve with several possible pathways, and is messy and complex. So why did they do it in this way? Because it's I mean, of course, the real world is kind of messy and complex. And so basically, while they were developing this approach and methodology, they didn't want to give a fixed way of doing these pathways. But you can use circles, you can use different ways to identify the processes, and basically. It replies to these diagrams can be used by completing the sentence. For example, if I do something, if I do X, then Y will change because, etc., etc. So basically, using the theory of change, approach, this is more descriptive. Usually, we have these charts that are quite kind of messy, and then we have a lot of descriptions to explain how do we get from one point to the other, okay? As opposed to the logical framework where we have the activities, the output, the outcomes, and the goal. But again, here there are courses of days of like how to develop a theory of change and how to develop a logical framework. This is not our aim today. This is explaining a little bit the differences, the similarities. What I think is similar in both cases is the result chain. That is something that we have seen also in the other presentation. So if we look at from this side, where we call it the vertical logic, we were saying that we have to establish our goal, our outcomes, our outputs, activities, and inputs. If we see it from the bottom up, we have to have resources to develop activities, to develop outputs, to reach outcomes, and to reach goals and impacts. I mean, this is a result chain that has to exist if we have to plan our project and then to implement it, whether if you use the theory of change or you use the other one, the log frame. And for example, in my case, when I talk about GRS, we are an organization that is result-based oriented. So that means And this is the important link with monitoring, that in order to monitor whether we are achieving our outcomes, outputs, activities, etc., sorry. We will see it later. We have to have some indicators that will help us to measure all these chain. But in order to have a good measurement system, so good monitoring, we have to be able to have these clear dimensions. So we have to know what is our goal, what are our outcomes, what are our outputs. So that is basically the link between planning and monitoring, that we have to define very well what we want to do and then starting setting up our monitoring system. So that is why I wanted to focus on this part of the project cycle management, on this MIL, monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, because the link for me is very important, that we have to know what we have to do, and then we have to start setting up our monitoring system. And we start by this result chain. So just briefly, we go back to what we have seen before. We have to know what is an activity, action, process taken or performed through which inputs are mobilized to produce outputs. Then we have the outputs that are direct products of services, activities of projects. Then we have the outcomes, and here with the outcomes we see that we have different levels. But what is important for outcomes is that basically when we start talking about outcomes, we start talking about this domain that is change in the final population. So when we talk about outcomes, we talk about change in behavior, change in awareness, change in being, for example, in economic condition or psychological condition, something that is really the goal of our, well, not the goal, the outcome of our project. Because our project, I mean, it cannot be of just doing activities. You do the activities at the output to reach something more profound, which is a change in the final population. And then we have the impact or the goals. So the impact, that we say that are long-term effects on the intervention, the big picture. This is all very important. So we said the RBM logic is result-based logic. So inputs are used to carry out activities, activities produce outputs, outputs produce outcomes, and outcomes contribute to impacts. Okay, I think I put also this slide because I think it's important. If in case some of you deals with monitoring, and this happens a lot in GRS, is that there is an important implication of being an organization that is result-based oriented. That is this result-based management has implications in every level of an operation. So at field level, somebody that is at field level, so that is in the front line, that deals with, for example, distribution or activities. When we talk about monitoring, usually at field level, the officers, when we talk about monitoring, focus on outputs. While the coordinators, so usually people that are more at country level or a different level of coordination, will focus on outcomes. Because as you can imagine, measuring the outputs from the outcomes, I don't want to say that one is more difficult than the other, but usually measuring outcomes takes more complexity, because usually measuring behavioral changes or some changes that are not numerical, it takes a little bit more of mixed methods and complexities. So usually in organizations, who is more at front level deals more with this type of monitoring that is clearly very important at output level, and at coordination level of outcomes. So here some list of specific characteristics of monitoring. So we said a process of systematic and continuous collection and analysis as a use of information for management and decision making. So through monitoring, we are able to identify problems during the implementation, and so we can make informed decisions and ensure accountability. So usually monitoring, we do it on a monthly basis. Immediately we can notice if something is not working, some activities are not implementing, and we can make immediate decisions on those problems or successes that are happening in our projects. So measures the progress towards plan. Then, okay, focuses on results, resources, activities in the log frame. Done at all level of management. So what we were saying, focuses on results, resources, and activities. We have just said that, for example, somebody that does monitoring at country level probably will focus more on results and that type of changes. Somebody that is more at project level probably focuses more on monitoring of activities at project level. In any case, it's done at all level. It can be that formal and informal. Okay, this is where it depends. I mean, informal, yes. Of course, the organization will have to do it always formally through reports, etc., etc. But we can also do some informal visits, for example, or informal monitoring. Then, when we talk about monitoring, key dimensions, key fundamental elements are the indicators that are basically our pointers. So they are our ways of measure if we are achieving our objectives, results or not. They provide the data and information that specify what to measure along the scale and can be quantitative and qualitative. Of course, here there are very long training and courses on this. We go into the, I mean, we go very quickly on these concepts of indicators. So basically, through the indicators, we answer the question, how do we know whether or not what we planned is happening or has happened? So we have these type of indicators. There are many others. I'm just using these ones. For example, quantitative. So we want to know percentage of attendance of kids in schools or number of home visits, students. Proxy indicators. So through proxy indicators, basically participation in activities implies general well-being of refugees. So basically proxy indicators that we use some indicators to understand the general pictures by, for example, having people attending to some, I don't know, activities, for example, that we have organized in parishes where we have together, we have sort of integration activities between host families and refugee families. By having a high attendance of refugee families, we have an understanding of a general well-being of the relationship, for example, between the host families and the refugee families. This is just an example of what is called proxy indicators, that through a proxy indicator, through basically measuring another dimension, we have an understanding of something that is wider and more complex. And then we have qualitative indicators. For example, number of urban refugees who said that home visit helped them with to cope with loneliness. This is, for example, typical qualitative indicators are perceptions or other surveys where they tell us about their physical or well-being status. So methods for data collection. So once we have these indicators, we have to clarify we have in our systems, we have different ways of collecting that the information through those indicators. So we can count or classification. So as we were saying, counting access or classification. I don't know. For example, we have different services, people accessing to livelihoods as opposed to education or psychosocial, this type of classification. Then we have questionnaires, where, for example, typical through the questionnaires, we can have also some quantitative indicators. So, for example, we ask to the project directors how many kids are going to accelerated learning programs, so after schools training. So in that sense, through the questionnaires, we can also have quantitative information, not only qualitative. But also we can also have data collection that are totally descriptive or qualitative. For example, in GRS, we do a methodology that is called the most significant change. We do focus groups and we ask our beneficiaries, the people that have access to our services, what is the most significant change in their life, and they start describing their experience, and they give us qualitative information, even if it's collected in a systematic way. So this is just to explain that once we have identified our indicators, we have to identify a number of sources or techniques or protocols or methods for data collection that help us to measure if we have made those changes or not that we have planned. The type of data analysis also is very important to talk about data analysis, because there can be also, we can collect a lot of information, we can collect a lot of data, but it's important to know what to do with the data. So once we have the data, we have to know that we can manage that data and have a lot of type of analysis that we can do. So we can do what we were saying, we can do the planned versus the actual. So with the data that we have collected, we can then analyze if what was planned adheres to what is actually happening. And it could be that is not going well, so we can see how to amend our activities, or we can decide whether we have to hurry up and implement more. I mean, it's information that is important to have. To check whether what we have planned is actually taking place. We can do percentages or ratios. We can do trends over time and comparisons between periods. And this is very important because this is one of the few ways of really measuring impact. When we talk about impact, is the change in the final population. The people are saying that, for example, they have improved their life. We can do it through trends. We collect, for example, the same type of data for 3 years. For 3 years in a row with the same population, and we see if people are saying that their life is improving or not. So trend over time is very typical for impact, for measuring the impact, or comparisons. We make comparisons between periods and between groups. So I don't know if you have heard of control group. Sometimes we can make the comparisons with the groups that is accessing to our projects. So that is the group that we are studying, but we compare it with another population that is a population of people that have not access to our projects, and we see what is the response. Because if the people that did not have access to our project are saying that they are in a better situation, that means that our project is not really contributing to any change, and we really cannot say that we are having an impact. Clearly, this is quite complex, and usually we do this type of analysis when we do external evaluations, not monitoring. Then we can see geographic variance, we can see group variance. programmatic approach and standards. So how through our programmatic approach we are in line with international standards, for example, or not. Usually there are international standards for education, for emergency, for humanitarian, for livelihoods, and so there are some standards, and we can compare our results with the standards. Okay, data analysis, what issues can you see? So we can see underachievement. So we were saying before, so if we're not achieving, we can see that we are underachievement or overachievement. If a project is doing very well, there can be also cases where we are overachieving against what we have targeted in the planning phase. We can see the differences by data type. This is very important because it's important to be able to disaggregate. So we can disaggregate by gender, or for example, by profile. We work with refugees, displaced, local citizens, migrants, and maybe we can also make differences disaggregating table profiles. And we can see the beneficiary satisfaction with response. We have seen it before. Then with the data analysis, we can really make a step of reflecting and really understanding what is behind the data and the issue. Maybe we can understand the reason, or we can go in depth and we can try to understand the reasons for the delays, or if there were problems in the implementations, or there are problems with other partners, or maybe the data was not correct, or we didn't have data. And so we can decide what are the next steps, or what action we have to take, who is responsible, and the time frame for amendments. If things are not going well, or if things are going very well, we might decide to replicate the project or to do a scale up to do it in other places. So, internal, well, this is the example of GRS, what we have for monitoring. We have internal reporting monthly. We have expense records and control monthly. This is budget, expenses versus budget. So we have also for the narrative and the financial part monitoring. And then we have the 6 months report, this consolidated report and summary. Here I had this slide before, but I think it's important now to re-look at it together. Differences between monitoring and evaluations. Monitoring, we say, is continuous throughout the cycle. Tracking process against indicators, measure use of inputs, activities, and outputs to make minor changes. Evaluations are occasionally, usually once every 3 years we do it, like in-depth analysis, measure long-term impact, sustainability, to make major changes in the future work. Evaluation, we usually talk about external evaluation, or conducted by somebody that is external to the organization, external consultants, although we promote the participation in the team of some internal members. So this is an example of a project monitoring plan. So we take, for example, the result indicator. We write how many times we have collected the data. We usually put the data source. So if we do it through questionnaires or qualitative qualitative technique, as I was mentioning, most significant change or others, then we put who is the responsible person and who is going to use the information. Usually are the project directors or the country director, and then project evaluation, then challenge. What are the current challenges you experience in your monitoring and evaluation practice? This is an example of how to monitor, for example, each outcome based or each result in a project, but can be also done for outputs. This is an example of outcome, but also is applicable also for outputs. And I think I would stop here, because I think we can go to reflections and key takeaways, because there are 12 minutes left. So am I good with time? Yes. Okay. Okay. Oh. Okay. So now if we go back to the agenda, so now we talked about the second part of the PCM, the general, like the basic concept of PCM, and we focused more on the meal part. And here I really wanted to give you some more like insights and some a little bit more of explanation of the link between a result-based approach, which is we have to plan our like result chain in the planning phase, provided that we have done all the phases of the project cycle. And once we have done that, when we start setting up our meal, after we have done the needs assessment and the planning, we start thinking on how to set up our monitoring and evaluation, accountability and learning, which is very important because measure the progress of our project and measures really if we are doing well or not, and if we need to amend or not, or to continue in this way. So now I think that in our last minutes that we have together, I wanted to ask you if you want to share something from the group discussions and from these presentations that I've given, so that we can hear about your thoughts, your sharing, your reflection, and maybe reflect further together. Okay, there is one. There is one question. Yes, about the presentation and recording. They will be They are available. They are available. I've already shared them with SIMI. And okay, yes, great presentation. Email out the slides. Yes, of course.
They're asking if there is any software recommendation for the whole cycle to be used. I guess this is the question. If there is some kind of software that follow throughout the stages.
Software, like for example, in JRS, we are developing our own software that is called Programs Monitoring and Evaluation module, that is part of a wider IMS, so that our colleagues on the ground will fill in the various parts of the project themselves. So in terms of outside, I'm not familiar with software to set up the plans. I can figure it out, but I'm not sure that there is something that is widely used for the different phases. There are bits and pieces like because actually this is a big challenge of the organization, especially for monitoring and to me to have everything put in one single platform, and that is why JRS is developing its own one. So there is a question: at what stage do you reinforce prioritizing of actions? Good question. So at what stage do you reinforce prioritizing of actions? Definitely prioritizing of action, you do it in the programming, in the first part, before even doing the needs assessment, because in programming it's very important to reinforce the prioritizing, in the sense that, for example, in JRS, it's very clear for us what is our mission. And then once you have done it in that part, you reinforce it while you do needs assessment. Why? Because needs assessment, we are experiencing in many places huge amount of needs, and in coordination also with other agencies working in the different territories, it's really it is the moment to reinforce the priorities that you are able to follow as an organization. Like GRS, we are quite strong in, for example, in education and in psychosocial and in those components that I was mentioning before. And so we reset our priorities so as to avoid forgetting where we come from, which doesn't happen, but that is the moment.
There is a second question. Will you please share the JRS system?
I wish it's still piloted in 3 countries. At the moment, we have piloted it in Uganda, Kenya, and Nigeria. But it's and we are in the phase of doing training, doing courses online and on site. I think I can take with me this question because I think when it will be finalized, I don't know if it can be open sourced because we have a code for that. But I think it could be a good idea just to help sisters and brothers organization to achieve the same objective, which is improve the projects and ultimately and most importantly the life of the people the beneficiaries of our projects. So at the moment, I cannot share it because it's not finalized, but I can follow up on that.
I want to just remind that we have 5 minutes left. So if you have more questions or reflection to share, please feel free to do it now, because then at 4:30 we have to close. So if there are no other questions or reflections, I will take this opportunity to thank very much Cecilia for this very rich and interactive presentation, for providing us so many information on process cycle management, but in a very easy way to understand and to digest. So I'm pretty sure that her slides and her presentation that would be available later, part 2. No, there is a question in the meantime. Carmen Speck is asking when it would be part 2. No, the webinar was already divided in part 1 and part 2 today. So the first part was held from 2:30 to 3:30, and the second part afterwards. So tomorrow there is going to be the Spanish version of this same webinar, also with our speaker Cecilia. So I thank you very much, Cecilia. I thank Gianluca for providing the technical service, WISG, SIMI, all the sisters and fathers working with migrants and refugees, all of you that were here today and following us. Thank you for your presence and thank you for your service. And we, SIMI and WISG, will provide more information on the coming months during the summer for the coming webinars, advanced webinars that will be on advocacy and fundraising, will be in the second half of the year and beginning of next year. So thank you very much for your support and for your presence. Yes.
Can I just share the last slide just
Please.
just to conclude, because sorry, just to conclude. Do you see? Am I sharing? No, not yet.
Yes.
Okay. So just briefly, key takeaways. I would like you to go home and to think about this planning and decision making on what and how the next step should be will help to set clear roles and responsibility as well as resources needed. I think it's important. I mean, you were discussing in groups about what was your role, or were you supposed to be working in the different phases of the project cycle management. I think that planning is really key also for your decision making and to understand what are the next steps and the clear roles. Then every roles and responsibilities are connected to PCM phases, so there are always shared responsibilities. And the lessons learned from each phase will help adjust strategy for better results. So that what we have seen now. And then here I want to thank you all for this opportunity. It's always a pleasure to support sisters and brothers that are doing really an incredible job on the ground. We do our best. I will take with me this question of can we share the system? Once it's finalized and updated, we can continue the discussion. For the time being, thank you all very much. Thank you, Veronica, Gianluca, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.